What's up, my geeks? Jeffrey Powers here from Geekazine, Think Magazine, put into Geek, and we're doing something a little bit different today. I went to see Superman. I actually went to see it twice. I am a Superman fan. I've been a Superman fan since the beginning of my time at least. And out of the DC universe, out of the comic universe, Superman has been my set character. Since 75, I got Superman comic books. I collected the comic books over Marvel comic books, over Wonder Woman or Batman or any other comic book. It was all Superman for me. The death of Superman was a very important comic series in my life of collecting. And so the Superman movies also, it was a part of my life that I cherish. And I want Superman movies to be very powerful, fruitful, and exciting, so I could sit down and just watch a Superman movie marathon. And of course, the original Superman with Christopher Reeve is by far the hands down the telling of the original story and the telling of that. It's just one of those movies that I'll sit down and watch again and again. Superman, once it gets to Superman 3, that's where things start to fade out. Out of the new Superman stuff, I was a fan of Lois and Clark. It was the first time where I realized, yeah, you can kind of take the Superman out of the Superman story and tell a different type of story. And I like that. I was okay with Smallville. The major movies were the big problem with me. And I have not been a DC fan in the last 15 years. A lot of the movies were just 20 minutes and done. And I always gauge a movie as in, do I want to see that movie again? If it's free, if it's on TV, if it's on one of my streaming things and it's like, okay, I'll watch it. But do I really want to see a movie like that again? A lot of movies in the Marvel era, I definitely do. Like Deadpool and Wolverine. Perfect example. I don't know how many times I've seen that movie already. I will have sessions where we'll watch the MCU universe. And I like that. Could never do that with the DC universe. The most I did do was Shazam. I watched that a couple times. And Aquaman was pretty decent. Now, I know some of you will have a love or hate relationship on all of that, and you have your opinions, and that's great. But these are my opinions. And so when I came into this movie, I came in with a very curmudgeon feel, a very thick skin, because I didn't want to be disappointed once again in watching this movie. And that's where I stand on this. And the reason why I'm putting this out is my thoughts on James Gunn's DCU Superman, which is a universe on its own. It's not DCEU, even though there's going to be characters that are kind of crossing over. We're going to see Peacemaker TV show crossover. But technically, you got to think of those as two different types of peacemakers. The DCEU Peacemaker and then the DCU Peacemaker. Now, we'll see what happens when they come out with the show, if they're going to reference anything that happened prior, or if they're just going to say, that happened over at the DCEU, and this is the DCU. So we'll see what happens there. So lots of different things. And I think that's why a lot of people get numb to this, because there's been a retelling. There's been another type of Superman. And we just don't want to see that shake and bake method happen again, just to get disappointed. Because I think fans have a 3-point scale. You might go from 1 to 10, but there's a 3-point scale. And if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, that's basically the 3-point scale that they're going on. The 3 points are, I like it, I love it, and I hate it. There's no in between. 3 points, that's it. Like, love, and hate. There are some DC movies I like. None of the DC movies in the last 20 years I've loved and will want to watch again. Simple as that. I've watched Superman twice now, so it's in the like, for sure. But there's a lot of things that could have put it in the love. And one of those things, one of the things going in that really made me nervous was James Gunn's comedic ideas. Because although I put Guardians of the Galaxy in the like area, and the same thing with Tiki Wakanda, with putting like Thor in the like area, but the comedic points is always what I have a problem with. And with Superman, I was expecting that same flavor come in, but the real question was it going to be heavy or was it going to be light on those types of jokes and references? Because you got to have a little bit of humor in a movie. I get it. We learned that a long time ago with movies like Something About Mary, where you can have this kind of absurd comedy in here and still have a storyline behind it. And we take things with a grain of salt. Think of it. This is not our universe. So in a physics world, up might not be down. Down might not be up. So a ball might bounce a little bit differently in that universe because gravity is a little bit heavier or something. I don't know. But the idea is that they have these extraterrestrials that on the planet, as in superheroes and as in villains and as in just creatures. And we'll talk about that later. You got to put that all together. That's not what we experience in our everyday lives. We're never going to have a Pikachu, 70-foot Pikachu character walking the streets of, well, it's a metropolis, but it was Ohio or looked like New York. Anyway, the whole point is that that's not going to happen. If it does happen, then that will be a news event. That will be like, oh, did you see that? Did you see the Pikachu character just walking through the Times Square? Wow, crazy. So the movie itself, the first night was 55 million in sales, ticket sales. The movie was $225 million to put together, the budget, complete budget. So they're going to hit their budget. I wouldn't be surprised. There's about 150 million for the budget for the weekend. And then next weekend completely go past the 225 million. So it's made its money and people do like it. They don't love it. They like it. And that is enough to have this universe continue forward. And that's great, because if this was to stop right now, if this was to fail miserably, then I don't know where they go. I don't think they'd fire James Gunn. They'd just kind of make that as a learned experience. And then, of course, Brass would come in and completely destroy the next movie. And then, yeah, that's where we would go. And then we wouldn't have Superman. I would definitely not be watching anything that's coming out by DC unless I had like 100 people that I know and trust come up to me and say, you got to go see this movie. Otherwise, I'll wait till it shows up on HBO Max or HBO or Hubble Max or whatever it's called now. So that is where that goes on there. And then, of course, they also have the next movie, which they've already announced, which is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. So they're not going to make like a Superman 2 next. There's going to be a Superman 2. It's not going to be called Superman 2 because there's already Superman 2. So there'll be a second Superman. It's just not going to be right away. But Superman is got to be it was this cornerstone content that you have to start from. Like, for instance, when Marvel started, they tried to make their cornerstone content, and they started with, of course, Sony started with Spider-Man, and then they had the Incredible Hulk, but it was Iron Man that was that cornerstone content, and Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, which really propelled everything. So the cornerstone content from here would have been Superman, or is Superman right now, and which is funny because he made the Blue Beetle. And there is no reference to the Blue Beetle. There's no anything of the Blue Beetle. Doesn't exist. Gone. Not even one. They had some cameos in there, and Blue Beetle was not one of those cameos. At least not that I saw. Maybe if you saw something different, let me know in the comments below. That's for sure. But I didn't see that. I was a little bit disappointed. I don't know if this is a movie. If that's a movie that's going to be swept underneath the rug or something. Or if there's going to be a Blue Beetle number 2. James Gunn said he loved the Blue Beetle and really wants that to be part of it. Maybe it'll become TV shows. Maybe we'll see it in Peacemaker. We don't know. So let's talk about what I liked and what I didn't like about the movie in general. The first thing, I'm not a fan of that cinematography. Both times I watched it, I also, just for argument's sake, I also have watched some of the other YouTubers that do regular reviews. I'm a big fan of Screen Crush, and so I love Ryan Aries and the team. It's not just Ryan, but it's the team, their thoughts and ideas on this. I think it's important that I get that idea because, I read the comics and I read Superman in particular, but I didn't know about the Green Lanterns and Guy Gardner. I didn't really know about Mr. Terrific or Hawkgirl. I knew what I saw on the Super Friends cartoon that I watched growing up. I knew them that way, but they really didn't have too many origin stories on that show. So cinematography was, I don't know, kind of choppy at best. Henry Braham, and yeah, I am not a cinematographer, so I'm not an expert on this field, so I'm just going to keep it very simple. Henry Braham was the director photographer. That's the role that they have. He did The Flash. He did Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He did Roadhouse, the new Roadhouse, and Suicide Squad, and many different others. So I've seen movies and liked movies that he's done. The cinematography on this movie was a little bit jarring. There were points where there was light that just didn't make sense. There was points where they were using fisheye lenses. Like, for instance, the main scene, you'll see the pictures where Superman's flying like really fast. And I like the idea of posing a shot with that fisheye lens when you're going really fast. But it was just that. It wasn't I'm starting to fly and we're seeing regular space, and then all of a sudden you would just bend into the fisheye. Maybe that would have made a bigger difference. There was a point where Hawkgirl was running around, flying around. There was that point where the camera was right there and she was running around. It felt out of place a lot of times. There are places for it, but those weren't. Just back and forth. There were a lot of times where just the phrasing could have been better. The opening scenes, for example, is another thing. Having that text, because we start out with text and then we get right into the battle, or what happened after the battle, where Superman's hurt. And we've seen that in one of the trailers where Krypto comes to the rescue. And so we have that, and we're going right into the action. And it kind of felt like I was watching a TV show. You know how they have the TV shows where they start with the action, and then about 10 minutes in, you have the intro, and then you go into the rest of the show. That's what happened here. So we had like a little bit of text to explain, since we didn't have an origin story. We had an explanation that Superman has been in the public for 3 years. And then this battle was going on for like up till about 3 weeks prior. So, and that happened really quick. So if anybody was walking into the theater at that point, they would have missed all that. And they would have been thrown right into the action and gone, did I miss more of the movie than I thought I missed? So there was a lot of things on there. There was also timing issues. Now, to me, a timing issue, what I define as a timing issue, is where if I have a conversation with another person, the conversation goes smoothly. Like, for instance, if we go, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Something like that. But if you go something like this, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Social media, TikTokers or whatever, they say that Gen Xers have that little pause before they start talking in their TikToks. And I associate that with this. So I feel that somebody could have just chopped just a little bit better to get that back and forth conversation going smoothly and happen smoothly. And it didn't. And it was a little bit disappointing. It didn't happen a lot, but it happened enough for me to notice it. As simple as that. So let's see. One other thing that really bothered me on the movie was people's emotions. Now, I don't know if James Gunn was trying to get a vibe of urgency or a vibe of, this happens on a daily basis, so we're just going to keep walking. And that's what happened in a lot of scenes and happened afterwards. We'll start with this first part, but, and you've seen TV shows, comedic TV shows, where they're walking down the street and all of a sudden, some whatever occurrence is happening, they're just continuing having a conversation while people get thrown around in the background and beaten up and everything like that. I don't know if that's where Gunn was going with that, then it didn't feel right to me. But if he wasn't going for that, then that's a different problem right there. So I didn't see the emotion of people. Like, for instance, when the big Pikachu, and I'm not even going to try and figure out what kind of animal that was. The Pikachu character it started out like this tall and then became like 70 feet high or whatever. And when they were seeing that, you had the people that were taking their phones and holding it up, wanting to get that viral video or whatever in social media. But they also just kind of were like, okay, I'm not running away, I'm walking away. There's a big monster falling down in my direction, and I'm just kind of strolling along. It won't hit me. I'm pretty sure of that. The emotion of I almost said Lex Luger. That's a professional wrestler, Lex Luthor, who was walking into the Fortress of Solitude, and everything's going around back and forth around him. And, it's kind of funny to see that he feels like he can just walk the path and nothing's going to harm him. But when you have a blade go like this and not even do a flinch like that, that's a little bit, well, what happened here? So it was things like that. And then finally, the other part that I was going to talk about was the second that one problem was resolved, they went right into the next one, and nobody really stopped and change the direction. And then all of a sudden it was just like, okay, now we're doing this. Okay, now we're doing this. And I'm trying not to get into too much because this is a non-spoiler review or vlog or whatever you want to call it. So they basically went from one event, and then all of a sudden they went into the next event. And it's just like that one event. And basically it was, they took down the big Pokemon character. And it was like, okay, there's 70-foot multi-ton monster lying on the grass here. Nobody's going to look at it. Nobody's going to pay attention to it. Nobody's going to clean it up. And all of a sudden the next thing happened. Everybody forgot about it. Just moved on. And yeah, in real life, that's what happens. Yesterday, something happened. Do you remember what happened yesterday in the news? Maybe, maybe not. That's the idea. But to have it happen so instantaneous was jarring, simply jarring. So, all right. So people's emotions, the city going down. Now, the one thing that I got a list here. That's where I'm coming from. The one thing that I saw on this was back in Superman. It was basically a story of Superman, Lois, but a lot of things that were the biggest thing that happened in Superman was the Daily Planet globe fell. Lois fell. There was not too many, somebody does a laser eyes on a building and thousands of people die. There's a point where that Pikachu character was going to fall into a building and Superman was holding it, keeping people safe. But if he would have crashed in that building, thousands of people would have died. Simple as that. And it's great that didn't happen, but there were points where it did happen. And that's where the movie is really taking the dive into, and that is the mortality the thought of right or wrong. We saw an interview with, and these are non-spoilers because these are all in promos and trailers. We saw this point where Lois was interviewing Superman. She was asking the hard-hitting questions. Did you get permission to go into Batvia and do what you did? And he said, no, I didn't. I thought I was saving people's lives. I prevented a war. Did you? In your eyes, you prevented a war. Somebody else's eyes, you didn't. Some little kid in that country has probably lost his mom and dad because, during the fight, rocks fell on them and they died. So what's the point of view? And we've had that exploration of point of view in the MCU, but we didn't have that in DCU yet. And now we're starting to get that type of thing. So that was to kind of humanize Superman. And even in Lex Luthor's eyes, where he wasn't human. He's not an American citizen, technically. He's not from Earth, so he's an alien. Or it's an alien. That was his point of view. It shouldn't be it shouldn't be the point of view. There should be no thought of that. It's still somebody that you have to live with. That's still somebody that's still on the streets and technically won't go away. So if you have a different thought on that, let me know in the comments below, definitely. But that was what I saw that James Gunn was exploring, that depth. And that's what I like about his movies, was it didn't really stay cut and dry. It really got into the gray areas and stuff like that. And I was really excited about that. And we saw the city going down a little bit, but it wasn't the main attention. And because there was also the point of, there were so many things going on that you had to pick your battles. I saw a Progressive commercial of somebody getting hit, and the Progressive people came up and they said, yeah, we got here before Superman, because it's a Superman branded, dual branded commercial. Anyway, yeah, we got here before Superman. And the person that hadn't gotten the car accident goes, yeah, I don't think Superman comes for these types of incidences. And they go, yeah, that's because we're here. They were just being proud of it. But the idea is the same idea here. Is like, there's so many things going on. You can't be in two places at once. And then there's a point where you just have to have downtime. There was a scene where they're fighting a monster, and Superman's having a conversation with Lois, and he's not fighting the monster. And she even alludes to that, and he goes, they can handle it. So there's points of pick your battles that I liked on that. So it makes you realize that you can't do everything at the same time. And I think there was, in the original Superman, there was a point of that. You can't do two things at once. Can you save Lois, or can you save the planet? And they kept it general, but this one was a little bit more in your face, because they had the monster just flying around and the other heroes trying to battle it. So let's see. The last thing I'm going to talk about before we get into the cast is, and my biggest point in the cast, and I'm going to save that for last. So if you're wondering why I'm not talking about a specific person, there's a reason. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Krypto. Krypto the dog was a big part of the movie. And it was great, because we've always knew about Krypto the dog in the comics, and got its own comic book. The Rock played him in a movie with opposite Kevin Hart, things like that. So we had Krypto, which became a part of the DCU, and that's fine. Krypto was to me like this untrained dog. Like, you get a new dog and it just doesn't know what to do, pees all over the place, it doesn't understand commands or anything like that, and you just have to train it. And that gave this love-hate relationship between Superman and Krypto, which was another moment that could happen during the movie. We won't get too much into it, but the biggest thing that I found was Krypto was CGI. It was modeled after another dog named Ozu, something like that. Ozu. And so everything in the movie was all CGI, which we know can be done. Of course, Rocket Raccoon, that was a great CGI. All these other characters that are now CGI rather than people. Then you have the modeled characters, the people that are in suits that create the character. Like, for instance, the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. The Thing is going, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's in the suit with the balls on it and the little thing in front, getting all the reactions, and then they're going to turn that into CGI. In this case, that's technically what they do with Ozu, but it's not in the same aspect, because you have to have the trainer there to do different things, which kind of makes this type of situation a little bit plastic. And that's what I felt that Krypto was in this plasticity. I don't know if that's a word or not. I just made it up if it isn't. But the whole point is that there would have been great if they would have had times where they actually used a real dog instead of the CGI. My understanding, and that's my understanding, I have that's 100% CGI in the movie. The one scene that really got to me, that it would have been perfect if it had a real dog, was the scene where Superman's lying on the bed and Krypto's on his chest. If they could have actually used a real dog to do that, then that would have made it so much better. It would have made so much better. But I could forgive a lot of the CGI that Krypto had for the amount, but he did play a very prominent role in this movie. And some other spoilers, which I won't get into, of course. So I was really hoping that they could have done a little bit more, and CGI was a secondary to using a real dog in some of those cases. So, all right. So we talked about the intro, talked about the text of the battle, which I wasn't a big fan of, talked about the cinematography and everything like that. Let's get into the characters. Before I do that, I do want to thank my Patreons for helping me with creating these contents, whether it be an unboxing, a review, or just this vlog that I'm doing. So if you want to be a part of the Patreon, I call you Geek Scony, which in Wisconsin, you're Scony. And of course, I'm a geek, so I'm a Geek Scony. So if you want to be a part of the Geek Scony Nation, all you have to do is go over to patreon.com/Geekazine and be a part. You can also tip me over at paypal.me/Jeff Powers, paypal.me/Jeff Powers. And of course, the t-shirts. We got tons of t-shirts like 80s Jesus saved me one floppy at a time. We've also got the original AI, Geek AI, and then Geek Butts. I like Geek Butts and Cannot Lie, and then the Cryptic Geek shirt. And you can find these over at teespring.com, or you can find them over at amazon.com/shop/Geekazine. You scroll down, you'll see a merch section, and there's all the t-shirts, including the Geekazine branded t-shirts. So you can get them there. I appreciate that. If you do, it helps me keep the lights on and keeps these videos going. All right, let me take a drink here. Let's talk about the characters, because this is integral. If you got a bunch of characters that don't fit, don't work well, it doesn't matter how great the movie is, it's going to flop. And we've seen many situations in TV shows and in movies where that's happened. So the cast, it was a great cast. And it was all because of David Cornsweet. I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, Superman. What really separated him from the other actors that played Superman, including Christopher Reeve, which by far is still the #1 Superman, is the fact that David was a chameleon. In fact, I saw it in the promos and the trailers, and then I saw it in the movie. There were points where it didn't look like him. It looked like it was a different actor. And the biggest point was when they showed the scenes with him as Clark Kent. This was the first time that I could actually believe that putting on a pair of glasses and mussing up your hair is actually a way to disguise yourself, because he did not look like Superman at that point. And even as Superman, he didn't look like Superman. And then there was another point. It's a spoiler, so I can't talk about it, but it's just, I don't know if how he does it, if he doesn't, if it's just not in his control or whatnot, different angle or whatnot. Maybe it was the cinematography that made me kind of have facial blindness of some sort. But the whole point is that he did not look like him, which made the whole Clark Kent Superman idea believable. So that was really impressive. I really loved it. I love the way he worked. There were a couple times where it was a little bit jarring, the whole, hey, eyes up here, and then he flew up in the area, but that was more of a direction than anything. But his doing the lines, the interview where he's getting mad, he's showing different type of emotion, which we've seen Superman have anger emotions before. Even in the first 1978 Superman, we had, he got really upset. But a lot of times he's just very calm and collected. And that's not what we really saw with this Superman. There was a point where, once again, the Pikachu, his foot was coming down. There was like a little dog barking at him, a little comedic moment. And he's just trying to get the dog out of the way so he can bring that foot down so he can fight this monster without getting any type of foot fungus or anything. I don't know. But the whole point is that he was doing it in a calm and collected manner, but still with a sense of urgency. And that's what I liked about it. So as an actor, David, he will work with this franchise for the years to come. And I can't wait to see what happens in the future and especially if they come out with things like Bizarro World or anything like that, how he could fill those shoes, which is really exciting. Let's talk about next one. We'll talk about Nicholas Hoult, Lex Luthor. And I thought he was really, really good as Lex Luthor, but he had a bit of a complex. And I know that's the whole idea of a bad guy, is to have a bit of a complex, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more emotion. He was basically on or off. He was either neutral or angry. There was a happy scene, but it didn't really feel like a happy scene too much. I love the fact that they put LexCorp's building in between two buildings. I've seen these in like Korea. I've seen it. So basically they had this centerpiece, and that's where they were, and that's where their control room was. And he was like a director. If you ever watched a control room, he was the technical director. Okay, turn on to 42A and over there, because he was basically directing one of his characters to fight Superman. And that was kind of fun to watch. It was a little bit different, and yeah, just really fun to watch. As they had a whole control room, and that's the other thing is, it's not just one person. Because usually you see like Batman or something like that. It's Batman and his henchmen. Where'd those henchmen come from? I don't know. Where do they go to? I don't know. Maybe they go back and go over to the next bad guy when the first one gets incarcerated. I don't know. Take off the question mark shirt and put on the Penguins shirt. I don't know. But the whole idea is that he had a control room of regular everyday people that probably just answered ads on Indeed to get the job, and they're very impartial as to what they do, and they don't think about it, so they just do their job. And that's where I really liked him in there. I really wish he would have had a little bit more exposition, but it was just more of, I am right, you are wrong, I don't want to talk to you. It was very jarring, because even with the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor, yeah, he was telling people that they were wrong, but he did it with gravitas. He was a character. And of course, he was also a character that was pretty much hated by the public, whereas this Lex Luthor was supposed to be a mogul, a billionaire, probably had his own SpaceX or something like that. And yeah, it didn't feel right. He didn't have any public face to him. Even when he was on TV for the interview, it wasn't a public face. And that's where I missed on that. So I think that they could really culture this character a little bit more. I do like the fact that he did have an Otis. For those of you who don't know, in the original Superman, Gene Hackman had Ned Beatty. Ned Beatty was Otis, but he was a bumbling fool. This Otis was a little bit more organized. It felt like Mike from Breaking Bad. Could get things done. And at first I thought he was Wendell Pierce. I was like, Wendell Pierce is the bad guy? Oh no, this is a different guy. But anyway, so yeah, that was great. He had a control room. He had another character that was kind of like, I associate him with the guy on Airplane, the movie Airplane, that unplugged the wall when the power went out. He's go, oops, and then plugged it back in, or came out with those little snarky comments in passing when people said stuff. I don't remember the actor's name that played him. That just popped into my head. But the whole point is that he had a good team that could pick up on that slack, but for Lex Luthor, but he didn't have that front face that I was looking for at times, especially since he is a public figure. Moving on, let's go to Nathan Fillion, Guy Gardner. I knew about Guy and, of course, the Green Lantern Corps. And now that I've seen Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, I definitely want a Guy Gardner, Ryan Reynolds something. How cool would that be? Just a cameo. If they do a Green Lantern TV show or movie, if they just have a cameo of Ryan Reynolds next to Nathan Fillion, that'll make it. Simple as that. So his direction was, I'm here because I was asked to be here by the Green Lantern Corps, and I will serve the people. I will not serve Superman. And he had a very myopic look at it that kind of widened towards the end of it. And we won't get into it too much, but I really liked that character. He was a great character, but he was not the breakout character of the list. And the breakout character of the list is the next one, Edie Gathegi, who's Mr. Terrific. At first, he was sitting in a chair, so I thought they were going to play the idea that he had a handicap, that maybe he couldn't move his legs or something like that, but that wasn't the case. But he's just Mr. Terrific. He knows things. He can do things, and that's what makes him terrific. And his character arc, I would have loved for them to get into all of those people's character arcs, but I just thought there were too many characters in the movie. If they would have gotten rid of like one or two, that could have changed how we got to learn a little bit more about these people. And Mr. Terrific would have been one of those that would have had a great story that we could have learned and grown from. So by the end of the movie, we'd be like, yeah, Mr. Terrific. I can't wait to see his own movie. And I still did, but I'm at the point where it's like, yeah, we could have gotten more. We could have gotten more from that. So, which is another reason why we're in the like category, not the love category. What do you think of Mr. Terrific? Let me know, comments below. Isabel's Merced played Hawkgirl, and she was always in the background, and it was okay, but once again, would have loved to see her come out and learn a little bit more about her. She was a character that if she wouldn't have been there, that would have made the movie, that wouldn't have changed the movie. So That's a key right there. Next one is Anthony Carrigan as Metamorpho, which great role. I can't get into too many spoilers with him, but he was mostly CGI, and so he gave us the alien feel out there, and I liked how they put him in, and that's all I can really say about that as a non-spoiler. Excuse me. Let's talk about the robots. Several stars played robot voices, but the big one was Alan Tudyk, who played number 4, or Gary, as he was referred to towards the end of the movie. They had a very small role in that, and it was very important that they were in there, but it was kind of jarring. They were there, they were gone, they were there, they were gone. They were oblivious as to what was going on. And it would have been nice to see, okay, something's happening. We need to react. And they didn't. Even when Superman was walking in there, they would just came up and go, oh, hi. Oh, you're hurt. Okay. Instead of, we know you're hurt because we saw you at the front door. There has to be a webcam or something like that at the front door. So we know you're hurt. Let's get you in and get you helped. So there wasn't that sense of urgency wasn't there I was talking about earlier. So we're going to bulk this together. Wendell Pierce, Beck Bennett, Skylar Gisono, who played Jimmy, and Michaela Hoover, who played Cat Grant. That was the, style, fashion editor, whatever her role was. Wendell Pierce was perfect for Perry White. I was excited when I heard that he was going to do it, and a little bit sad that there were a couple other thoughts in mind for Perry White, like a J.K. Simmons or something like that. Skylar was Jimmy, but he wasn't a photographer. He wasn't a little timid, shy kid. He was a ladies' man, and we learned about that during it. And he had a big arc that really brought everything to justice, which is great. Cat Grant was just a filler, and I was okay with her role, just to kind of have conversations. There was a point where she was having a conversation with Lois Lane that was okay. But it was Beck Bennett's character, Steve Lombard, that really, it was the bumbling idiot character, and it felt so out of place. And I love Beck Bennett. We were sad when he left Saturday Night Live. It's always exciting to see him in there, but the role that he was playing in this, I really wish there was a little bit more meat on that. But the whole, I'm running to you and then I can't stop, so I'm sliding in and hitting some water cooler or something like that. So he could have, once and again, another character that could have just completely not been in the movie, and we wouldn't have cared. So let's go and talk about Maria Gabriela de Faria, who is the engineer, and Sarah Sampaio, who is Eve. And then, of course, Ultraman, which we can't talk too much about because there's a lot of spoilers to that. But I liked her as the engineer. They breezed by her explanation so fast on the first viewing that I didn't understand until I saw the second one. She was basically built by nanobots, and nanobots that can restructure her. So there was one point where she was standing up and then she did a handstand, then all of a sudden the nanobots would reconfigure so she was standing up again. So it was things like that, like I said, the first viewing, I got a little bit confused on. And then I realized I missed that one bit of information on the second viewing. And that just made so much more sense on that second viewing. So she was also a here and gone character. There was one scene where she's very integral. Wouldn't happen unless she was there. So I get that. But then nothing. And I think it was also the fact that there was never a engineer versus Hawk Girl. Guy Garner versus, I don't know, the big Pikachu thing. There was never really a pair-off. So at the end, a lot of these movies where they have those ultimate fight scenes, they're always pairing off those people so they can have individual fight scenes. And that didn't happen in this movie. So yeah, Michaela, she had an important part at the beginning, but if she would have disappeared after that, I wouldn't have thought twice, but she didn't. And so that made me wonder why there wasn't a little bit more meat on this bone. Let's move on from here. Let's talk about the parents. Superman, Clark Kent's parents, Ma Kent and Pa Kent. I love it. I love the characters, the actors. That's Neva Howell and Pruitt Taylor Vince as Ma and Pa Kent. I love the fact that they put somebody in the role that looked like a farmer. It didn't look like some chiseled body. because once again, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but I love the fact that they didn't kill off Pa Kent like in all the other movies. Superman, Clark Kent, had a father figure past high school. And I think that's very important. Now, Adventures of Lois and Clark also did that. They didn't kill off Pa Kent. So, and of course I like that show. So I like the fact that he still had a father figure to work off of during this movie. They could have used a little bit more. The scene where Ma Kent is talking into the phone was, you know, a comedic thing, but it was just like, okay, you know how to talk into a phone. I mean, before the cell phone, you had a landline. I think you could, yeah, I think we're past that type of humor right now. So it's a minor gripe, but the whole point is that they had a good role in this movie, and I really liked how they were cast. Who played them? Let's talk about, let's go to Frank Grillo. Rick Flag Sr. was completely underutilized in this movie. I think he was used 3 times, 3 scenes. And it was for somebody that we've already been introduced to in a DC movie experience as Rick Flag and Frank Grillo, the actor. I think they should have used it more. They didn't. And it was really, really another just hearing gone jarred. So they could have kept that person faceless. Let's talk about Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper, once again, it was a great role. It wasn't much of a role. It was there for a purpose, and it served its purpose. And we really didn't get to see Bradley Cooper too much. It would have been nice if we would have been able to see him a little bit more, but the story was really dependent, on us not seeing him. Unlike with Marlon Brando in the 1978 Superman, or with Russell Crowe as Jor-El. There's never a moment between Kal-El and Jor-El, and there's reasons why. That gets into spoilers. We won't get into that. So I liked Bradley Cooper's character. It's always good if he has more lines, and of course an interaction, but there was no way to do that. So, all right. That brings us to the one person that I haven't talked about, and I don't know if you've caught that or not. But the person I'm talking about is Rachel Brosnahan, who played Lois Lane. This was a very big departure from Lois Lane of the past. And in fact, I kind of, at the end of the movie, I was just sitting there going, what? I've been referring to Lois Lane as the Indiana Jones of this movie. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, there is a popular theory that in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, if Indiana Jones wouldn't have been in it, they still would have done everything that was in the movie. There was no reason for Indiana Jones to be in there. And I will lay down and say, if Lois Lane wasn't in this movie, it wouldn't have made a difference of this movie. Because a lot of the times, she becomes part of the problem. Because she's a reporter. Because she has a passion. Because she has a desire, because she's trying to win a Pulitzer, because she's trying to do her best. And she didn't do anything. In fact, when they were fighting the Pikachu character, she was sitting there talking with Kat, looking at a TV every now and then, not even looking like she was excited or anxious to get out there. In almost every other movie or TV show, Lois is in the action. And there's a point where maybe the Pikachu puts down another foot and Superman goes to stop it. Gets her out of the way. It didn't happen at all in here. And if you look at every single scene, you could comment to try and prove me wrong, but if you look at every single scene, you could do that without that scene. Even the interview. It doesn't have to be Lois Lane that does that interview with Superman. They could have had Jake Tapper was in the movie. They could have had Jake Tapper. He could have been on TV. It could have been anybody. Could have been Jimmy. Jimmy had more of a role in this movie than Lois Lane did. And Lois Lane was never in the way. She was never going for anything. She was, it's like she was just, there to get a paycheck. So maybe she wasn't covering the big Pikachu character or whatever, but she wasn't building any side story. In the original movie, she was building a side story that also about energy that ultimately got her in the way of an event that happened that Superman had to save her. Didn't happen here. Everything that she did in that movie, if you took her out of that movie, could have still been done, and they could have came with the same result. Very underutilized for a character that's supposed to be leading actress character. I didn't feel like a leading actress at all. It felt like a supporting character. I mean, not even one point where she was in peril. Maybe even something where she was in peril, but she got herself out of it. Or she had a better interaction with the Justice Gang, but it wasn't there. And it just didn't make much sense to me. This right here. And Rachel is such a great Lois Lane, but this character is the biggest fail of this whole movie. I want you to prove me wrong on that down in the comments below. But Lois Lane was the biggest fail. So all of that are my final thoughts. I'm still on the like, don't get me wrong. I would have been on the love if we would have had a little bit more meat to that potato. I'm okay with James Gunn's humor inside of the movie. There were a couple times where it just crossed the line a little bit, but that's okay. If that happens every 1 or 2 times, that's fine. But if it happens in every scene, if you get like all these serious scenes and then all of a sudden you just have to crack a joke at the end, that makes no sense. That's a sitcom. That's what I'd see on The Big Bang Theory, not what I'd see in Superman. I would have loved to have seen this shot a different way, a different cut, so to speak. When we got into what they call the pocket realm, it was a little dark. It's supposed to be dark, but it was a little dark. And it didn't have much. It had a little bit of explanation, but not much. And I think a lot of people that don't know what the pocket universe is will get confused. And they probably did get online and said, hey, what's the pocket universe? So there were a lot of underutilized cast members. But the Superman that they chose, the person that they chose to do Superman, David Cornsweet, at first I was like, he does not fit the profile. But with his look and his changing look, I've grown to love it. So I wouldn't change a thing on that for Superman. I wouldn't change a thing on most of the cast, except for a couple people that, like I said, they didn't have any real thing to do with the show. So if they were to disappear tomorrow, it's not a big deal. But I would be excited to see a Mr. Terrific movie or show. Definitely excited to see the Green Lantern Corps, as we saw a failed Green Lantern. There's a few things I'd love to see, and I know where they're going. That's Supergirl, a Woman of Tomorrow, and that's great, and I'm excited for that. So ultimately, I think out of the gate, James Gunn did a great job on this movie. I think that James Gunn restored my faith in DC. And I think, because usually even Iron Man wasn't the greatest of the movies in the MCU series, we're going to get that Civil War. We're going to get that Endgame, those mentality movies down the line. And I can't wait for that to happen. But this is a great starting point. Technically, we should be saying the Blue Beetle is a great starting point, but once again, nowhere to be seen in this movie. But anyway, that's my final thoughts on this thing. I know this is a little bit long, and I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. So please do so. And of course, if you want to like it, go ahead. And then of course, that bell notification, if you subscribe, bell notification so you know when my tech videos come out. So I didn't get too much into the tech of things because a lot of the tech was alien tech. There was no, hey, we got this gadget here that can do this thing. It was more like Green Lantern's hammer, or I suppose Mr. Terrific had this chair that he was sitting in and typing on. So that was interesting, but it really didn't need much explanation from that. And it had a lot of technology that, I could explain away fairly easy, except for the chair. I don't know how the chair is being run, but it didn't have anything that was kind of weird, like makes you think that in this universe, 2 + 2 actually equals 22 type thing. So, but other than that, that is what I thought of this movie. And I have seen it twice. And I have looked at some of the other articles and videos of people explaining things. So I made sure that I understood everything. I'm still going to call it the Pikachu guy. I don't care. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. And if I should be doing little vlogs like this, because this was kind of fun because I'm going to do very minimal editing. I'm just seeing some pictures up here. That's post-editing, by the way. But that's pretty much it. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, you guys geek out and go see Superman. It's worth it. And I can't wait for Fantastic Four, because that's another, as growing up, it was another comic I followed. Not as much as Superman. Can't wait to see how a third time's a charm for them. So thanks, and geek out. Take care.